we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast, a show that provides insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. My name is Rob Kaiser, and I am your host. Today is Thursday, March 24th, 2022. This is episode number 312 of the show, where we are going to talk about growing carrots, nasturtiums, spring tonics, bluebirds, and more. And all of this comes from the Old Farmer's Almanac, which I will link to in the show notes. Click on the link with the date, March 24th, 2022, for links to everything I just talked about and more. And as we get into the show, I will link to specific discussion links as well underneath that. In the show notes or on the date, you can find who was born this day, what happened today in history, and you will also find out that there are 89 days until summer begins. And that's kind of weird to think about because this is the first week of spring, but that's how the seasons change. Before we know it, it's going to be July 4th, and we will be in the midst of summer. So what is the origin of the phrase burning the candle at both ends? I find myself doing a lot of that, and I'm curious about that. So let's take a look at that real quick. What is the origin of the phrase? The phrase was coined by the American poet Edna St. Vincent Millay in 1920. It comes from her poem, First Fig, and reads as follows. My candle burns at both ends. It will not last the night. But ah, my foes, and ah, my friends, it gives a lovely light. And indeed, sometimes it sure seems that way, but guys, be careful when you're burning the candle at both ends because, well, while the light may be lovely, it may also be short. May not be sweet. There's also puzzles of the day and all sorts of information, so check out the date in the discussion links at the very bottom of the show notes to learn more. Before we get into what we're going to talk about briefly, one of these articles, let's read a little poem from Janet Burns. A frog leaps out across the lawn and crouches there, all heavy and alone. And like a blossom pale and overblown, once more the moon turns dim against the dawn. You know, lately it's been wonderful to sleep. Yeah, I know. That doesn't really seem to align with much of what we're going to talk about here, but you'll see in a second that it does, because with the temperatures warming up, I've rearranged my little office where I oftentimes sleep, because we wouldn't want to do anything against the law here. So while I live with my parents, I have my business office inside the pole barn, which ironically was constructed like a small apartment. So I rearranged that recently and put my exercise stuff, my exercise mats and my foam rollers and whatnot in the back with my bed, and put my desk and my computer up front so I could keep that on all the time, because it was brought to my attention that the constant cycling of power on and off will shorten the lifespan of your computer. And because you are the power is being cycled through the motherboard and also the actual power supply unit. So if you keep it running and just in sleep mode, it keeps everything on and less surges of power. You want to think kind of like the starter on your car. If you just keep it idling, periodically you're going to have to replace the starter and the starter motor or whatever, because that action gets used. But I digress. If you want to learn about carrots, you can read more, because everyone enjoys a sweet, crunchy carrot, but many people find them a bit tricky to grow. But they're not if you know how. See our carrot guide for planting, growing, and harvesting carrots in the garden and in containers. Plus, enjoy a new video on how to grow perfect carrots every time. Let me adjust this mic here, guys. Sorry about that. But if you are interested in growing carrots, there's an article in the show notes on how to do so. Also, the nasturtium is a cheerful and easy to grow flower. Their bold blooms and edible leaves, flowers, and seed pods make them an especially fun flower for kids to plant and a favorite companion plant in the garden. Here's how to grow your own nasturtiums. And if you're interested in that, you can read the article that is linked to in the primary link with the date in the show notes. There's also an article on Spring Tonics there. What is a Spring Tonic? The early settlers were firm in believing that the restorative powers of early spring greens, dandelion leaves, ramps, stewed rhubarb, boiled sassafras, wild strawberries, and young tender greens, stimulated the digestion and strengthened the body. That is kind of interesting. And then there is also an article on house hunting with the bluebird. So let's look at this Spring Tonic article and see what points I can glean from that. This is an article titled Spring Tonics, Early Green Plants. It was written on March 23rd, 2022. I'll link to this one direct for easy reference at the bottom of the show notes. And these little spring tonics were drunk in the spring to strengthen the body after a long winter. Because back in the day, we didn't have the ease of food all year round. And oftentimes, after a long winter, we were a little lean. Our food stores were depleted. And I suspect our gut biome was a little bit compromised because of what we were eating, right? So this was apparently, as far as I can tell, their way of rejuvenating the digestive tract to get everything back in line for the upcoming season. And in my own experiences over the past 6 months with functional medicine, I have really, in addition to getting my diet and my nutrition back on point, I have experienced somewhat of this leanness in the winter. And due to just, not the abundance of produce that is normally there. And I've actually, thinking about it, like I ran to Chipotle last night. I was going to play Tunes. Tunes got canceled. I had to run into town, get some dog food. Decided to pick up some Chipotle last night instead of eating the leftovers that I had, because I thought that would be a quick thing to do, but alas, I was wrong. and ended up wasting some time and eating a heavy meal. But anyways, Spring Tonics, you can learn more about that there. There's some information on Dandelion Tonics, rhubarb tonics, sassafras tea, wild ramps, strawberry tea, and much, much more. Now, I'm not going to read all of that, but where I was going with the functional medicine was that I've also, ramped up my fasting as well. And I don't have any, conclusive proof to back up my claims. It's my experience, and I'm not an expert, nor is this medical advice. Do your own research. But I have found that when I'm trying to do my own little resets of my gut, that an extended fast followed by copious amounts of sauerkraut and other fermented things, and light foods upon returning to eat, maybe some berries, some greens and a vinaigrette, healthy amounts of sauerkraut, maybe a little yogurt if I've got it, but I'm not eating a whole lot of dairy at this point other than some hard cheeses. And also supplementing with some various supplements that have been assigned to me or prescribed to me by my doctor at the Functional Medicine Department of the Cleveland Clinic. I will also link to the Functional Medicine Department of the Cleveland Clinic in the show notes so that you can learn more about what functional medicine is and how you can integrate this into your own life. And it's worth it, Yeah, I understand that some of it isn't covered by insurance. I don't know what to say. I mean, if you're not in debt and you're using your finances as an excuse to maintain the current status of your health, then the reality is you don't want it bad enough. All right? And that's just the simple truth. And the more you can come to grips with that, and the sooner you can come to grips with that, the sooner you will begin to make change. It's really quite easy. Well, I'm sorry. Excuse me. It's really quite simple, but this is not easy. Previously, there was a little tonic that I used to drink, as I'm trying to focus back on the actual topic of the show. There was like an elderberry thing, and I first found this at a local corner store down in the neighboring town, Litchfield, this unincorporated township right next door, where we live like half a mile from Litchfield, maybe a mile. And boy, I wish we were actually in the unincorporated area, but alas, we are not. And it was this tonic that I'd mix and I'd drink a little bit in the morning, and I started doing this a few years ago when I first began intermittent fasting and skipping breakfast, not eating until around 10 o'clock. So I'll see if I can dig that up and figure out what that tonic was, which is an easy tonic that you can drink. Has some benefit, at least it had some benefit for me, and that might be a good substitute for you to look into while you learn how to make your own tonics and you can do so by reading and checking out the show notes. So guys, that is it for today. I really appreciate you tuning in. I look forward to catching you on another episode tomorrow to close out the work week. This is Rob Kaiser, and thank you.
What can I do? The needs are many and answers a few. People turn away and I wonder why. If I can help somebody, then I want to try. People may think that it's odd that I believe in friendship and love, and truth is always the best way to the world that may seem odd. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. I'm an odd fellow. If we stand together, we'll never fall. We can make a difference and answer the call. We know the times are wasting every day, and we can help somebody along the way. People may think that it's odd that I believe